Not escape the ordinary and embark on a journey of self-discovery at our transformational Revive and Thrive retreat. Experience moments of clarity, find inner peace and unlock your true potential, surrounded by breathtaking natural beauty. There is only one spot left for our Revive and Thrive retreat this May. Don't miss your chance to join this life-changing experience with the most incredible group of women who are all cheering each other on. There is one more place available. Transform your life and reserve your place today. Hello and welcome to the More to Life podcast. I'm your host, Elle Mace, and today we're joined by Dr. Molly Maloof. Hey, Molly.
Hi, Elle.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's so good to see you.
Oh, and you. So Molly is a doctor of concierge, you're a concierge medical doctor, sorry. Now, will you just give us a bit more of an overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I am a physician entrepreneur. I have a small practice where I work with high-performing executives, investors, and entrepreneurs, and I help them optimize their health as well as performing personalized medical research. So basically, I'm a private doctor to help a person become the healthiest version of themselves possible. And if they have like a really hard to solve medical case that the system has not been able to figure out, I solve it for them. I also am the founder of the company Adamo Bioscience, and we are studying the science of love. And we just developed our first clinical study on a new sex therapy we've designed for couples, and the results are looking really promising. I'm an author of the book, The Spark Factor, and the course, Your Healthspan Journey, which was based on this course that I taught at Stanford University for 3 years. And I'm technically an influencer. So I represent this company called MitoQ. It's one of the best mitochondrial supplements in the world. And I basically, promote things that I really believe in.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. You're an influencer, but you're also promoting stuff that you really believe in, which is amazing. So yeah. You do so much. How did you even get into this? Like, did you want to be a doctor? Did you fall into it?
No, I actually in 5th grade was like very much, I think I've had like 3 pretty major awakening experiences in my life. And the first one started in 5th grade when I realized that like human suffering was really obviously bad. And there was a lot of terrible things that happened to good people. And I didn't understand why. And so I was really just committed to alleviating human suffering from like a very young age. Like I was 10 years old. Yeah. I wanted to understand why people got sick. And I wanted to understand why bad things happen to good people. So I really I'm going to become a physician. And then from that moment on, I was super committed to this path. And then I became a doctor, but I've also been an educator since I was a medical student. And the reason why I became an educator was because I transformed my own health using evidence-based lifestyle medicine. And I was able to dramatically improve my performance as a medical student. I'm talking going from like an average medical student to like the highest grades and the highest scores on my board exams. And everybody was like, how did you do that? And I said, I changed my lifestyle. I started studying how to take care of myself. And I literally realized that when you optimize health, you actually liberate tons of energy, and that energy you can commit to any sort of endeavor. So I have really kind of come to this conclusion that health creates greater human capacity, both on a cellular level as capacitance, which is like a physics term for the amount of charge that you can carry in your cells, the amount of energy that you can deploy at any time, but also human capacity, sense of like, what are your capacities, right? Like I didn't know I could teach at a top institution, right? Like I didn't know that I could work with billionaires. I didn't know that I could, I didn't know that I could do a lot of things. I learned to ice climb once, and I didn't know I could learn to do that. And, I just basically have learned that the more that you invest in your health, the more that you discover what you're capable of. And that's kind of why I'm on this mission, to really teach people about the first principles of health. And I really believe that when you optimize health, you optimize energy capacity, and you optimize basically you have more to commit to anything you want to do in the world. And I think everybody wants more energy. And so that's what I spent the last decade really optimizing and studying, is metabolic health. But then this decade, I'm really focused on human connection and the science of human connection, because it turns out that sexuality, love, and attachment is our fundamental biological programming to ensure our longevity and to ensure our survival of the species. So it's so important to our survival that like we honestly don't understand it, or we don't really acknowledge it as much as we do food and exercise and sleep and stress. And I think that if we were to emphasize more human connection, society would look a lot healthier as well. So that's kind of what I'm all about.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because I have noticed you transitioned a little bit into this relationship, and like I'm seeing sex, I'm seeing some juicy content
Oh yeah.
from you.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it. So just tell us then, because I know the audience would love to hear like what part of this whole relationship and sex, like what's your new knowledge on it?
Well, it's really more about the concept of, human intimacy and love, right? So like the concept of love as a scientific concept, we don't really learn about this in school, right? We don't learn about everyone, there's so many songs written about love. There's so many paintings made. There's so much art. There's so much, honestly, drama in society about our relationships. And yet we don't understand it as a science. And I've spent spent my entire career trying to study the science of human health. And human health is not the same as the science of disease. It turns out they're different things to study, right? So when I was studying health at Stanford and I was teaching it to students, I had this course on human relationships. And because I knew it was important to health, so I had to cover it. So when I go into a topic, I go deep and I start studying all the primary literature. I go into PubMed, I download all the papers, and I came across some work by this woman, Helen Fisher. And she's one of the advisors of my company, and she's a profoundly brilliant researcher. And she basically wrote this paper on the science of human love. And it was like, there's the sex drive, which is the drive to get you to sleep with people, right? The drive to get you to have sex. Then there's the romantic love drive, which if you have sex with one person consistently, you will notice that your body will start to become chemically and physiologically addicted to them. So romantic love is a commitment device. So we evolved in order to ensure attachment happens, right? So attachment is when you experience large quantities of orgasm and oxytocin and touch and connection and affection, that oxytocin creates a literal bond between two people. Like social bonds, like oxytocin is fundamentally behind parent-child bonds, couple bonds, family bonds, social bonds, relationships with culture, like with communities. So like our human bonds and the strength of those bonds determines whether we're going to actually survive major catastrophic circumstances. And I was very fortunate during the pandemic. I had an incredible family, incredible community. They were super supportive of me. I'm so lucky that they love me because I had a lot of, I never really had people take care of me before. I'd been really self-sufficient for so long. But that's the thing about social bonds is like they protect you. And so there's the sex drive, the romantic love drive, the drive to attach. I was like, well, why are we not developing products and services around this? And what you're noticing is even in the Wall Street Journal last week, there was an article on companies developing products around loneliness, companies developing platforms around loneliness. I thought about that for my company. I was like, we could totally do a loneliness company, but I was like, it's not that sexy. Well, what's really sexy is sex. And so I started looking at the space, right? I was like, okay, what companies are working on relationships? I was like, tons of companies are working on relationships, tons of dating apps, tons of companies working on like, just couples therapy, this and that. And then I was looking at sex and I was like, there's so little innovation here.
Mm.
Why? Where is the innovation in sex? Like, why has there nothing been done since the 60s? Like Masters and Johnson, there's a great show called Masters of Sex. And it's about this incredible OBGYN master, James Masters. He was like at the top of his game and he's like, I've been studying pregnancy, but like all these women have sexual issues and there's no science on sex. I'm going to make sex a science. So this guy literally risks his entire career, gets kicked out of the hospital, starts working on working on sex research. And eventually him and Johnson were this couple, they go on to creating the first sex therapy. And it's called sensate therapy. And it is still the gold standard today. There's literally not been new innovation since the 60s in sex therapy. And I'm like, okay, that's crazy. So it's crazy. And so I started looking at sexual dysfunction literature. And I was like, 40% of women have sexual dysfunction, and
Mm.
about 20% of them go to the doctor. And most doctors will not talk about sex because they are afraid of litigation and risks. And
Mm.
so we're in this really screwed up place where even if you're a startup working on sexual products, you get banned from Google, you get banned from Facebook and Meta. We're living in a world that is actually working against women solving this massive problem
Mm.
that, in my opinion, is contributing to, frankly, a lot of relational problems. Because if you
Oh,
actually look
yeah.
at quality of a person's sexual relationship, it actually can deeply affect their marriage, right?
Yeah.
And by vice versa, if a person's having marital problems, they're not going to be connected sexually. So I was like, wow, this is an area that I want to work on. And so what I did was I went out and I started talking to these different therapists. And I met this couple, Aaron Michael and Sayeda Desalegn. And we had been thinking about working together since I started my company, because I had initially started my company as a psychedelic company. Because psychedelics actually, and we're working on a paper on this, I believe psychedelics are a tool in the toolbox for literally, they're like a model for inducing the feeling that you can actually use. Psychedelics will induce the feelings of love and connection, and they can create art, they can create intense social bonds between people. So they're kind of a useful tool in the neurobiology of love. So I started studying the neurobiology of love, the neurobiology of psychedelics. We actually developed a few psychedelic products, but we didn't commercialize them because the world is not quite ready yet for these medicines, but they will come eventually. And so we worked
Amazing.
on some psychedelic. They actually are really powerful medicines. So the problem is that you have to be so careful ethically when you're dealing with love medicines, like medicines that actually are real life love potions. You got to be really careful. And I started studying the ethics of psychedelic medicine for relationships, and I was like, this is a huge risk into this. We have to be so careful what we do. We have to run so many
Mhm.
clear clinical studies. We can't just release this stuff out into the wild. So anyway, long story short, I was like, the psychedelic space has a lot of problems. We need to pause on the drug development, and we need to focus on things that we can start making revenue around right now. And the one thing I've settled on when I was talking to these sex therapists was like, I was like, we need to create a new sex therapy. If we're going to commercialize psychedelics, we know there has to be a therapeutic method attached. So
Yes.
when MDMA therapy is being commercialized for PTSD, and the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies has a very clear clinical protocol for the delivery of MDMA-assisted therapy for PTSD. So I said, let's just work on our protocol. And let's just like shelve the products for now and work on the protocol and focus and see what this protocol does on its own for improving sexuality, love, and attachment. So I was literally creating a protocol for human intimacy and human love. I wanted to study, I really wanted to be able to measurably improve love, both sexually, romantically, and through attachment. So I
Yeah.
created a study, and we had clinical measures of each of these three facets of human love. And then we created a method. And so Aaron Michael and Sayeda Desalegn, initially I brought them on to create a method for alleviating sexual pain. Because I was like, if we're going to try to tackle a problem space, I'm pretty sure sexual pain is one of the things that we can solve. So we developed a protocol for like actually teaching people how to have better sex. And the difference between what we are doing and what Masters and Johnson did is Masters and Johnson, their therapy was it kind of stopped at sex. And then they were like, okay, cool. You're now having sex. You're good to go. We were like, well, what about the things that happen during sex? What about the problems that come up when you're having sex, like dryness and pain and lack of arousal and problems with erection and problems with orgasm? Like those things were not really addressed by the initial sex therapy that was created. So I was like, Aaron, Sayeda, you guys are experts on actual sex, and you guys are tackling things that most sex therapists won't even go near. Because honestly, the truth is that modern sexual medicine doesn't really want to talk about sex. It's crazy. Like they don't really want to look at the thing that's the problem, which is penetration can be really problematic for people. Like
Yeah.
the actual act of penetration for a lot of women and men um, can create a lot of problems. There's especially as women and men get older and have been in long-term relationships, bodies change, right? And the
Yeah.
model of sex we're being taught through porn is not particularly pleasurable for women. And if you
No.
actually look at porn, and I guarantee if you go on Pornhub and you watch, most women are not enjoying themselves. they're not actually they're not actually having enjoyable sex. Because
no.
what a woman wants, or even what a man who's a gay man wants, is not this intensely dominating experience. Like actually what most people want is connected sex, right? They want transcendent sex. They want magnificent experiences. They want sex that feels like you're merging with someone. And I don't think a lot of people have ever even come close to that. So Aaron and Saida and I, like, let me tell you, I had like very, very, very high standards for what I wanted them to do. And they were like, Molly, you're asking for a lot here. And I was like, guys, you're the best in the world. You're the best in the world. You can figure it out. So we created this protocol on paper. It was really 50 pages long. And then I said, well, how are we going to deliver those? There's literally only like 1,500 sex therapists in the country. There's not enough people to prescribe this. We have to figure out how to give this to people. So I said, you know what we need to do? We need to turn this into a digital health platform. We need to be able to give this as a digital health product that can be prescribed by a doctor, a therapist, a psychologist. And we also, eventually, what we're also working on the side is we're creating an AI sex therapist that can help you troubleshoot if your therapist isn't available. So let me tell you, building an AI sex therapist, I can't even do it. And I work directly with people high up at OpenAI, and I can't get them to change censorship for me because sex is so highly censored on the internet that I have to go to a separate company to create a direct vertical for me using all of the literature that we've collected to create my own AI. So it's like the most fun I've ever had in work. And we just started getting our clinical study results back. And I can't tell you what they are, but I can tell you that it's looking like we've got statistical significance for improving various facets of love that we wanted to measure for. So we'll know more in the next 2 weeks because we just got our final surveys back. But I'm like beaming right now with joy because I actually think we may have done what we set out to do.
Oh my God. And what does that look like? Like, what does this end product look like?
Yeah. Okay. So you go online and you and your partner fill out your initial questionnaire. And this initial questionnaire is going to analyze your sexual function, your sexual satisfaction, your relationship quality, so love is measured through intimacy, passion, commitment, as well as this concept of inclusion of other. So imagine you're here and you're here. There's two circles. Inclusion of other is like, how much do you guys feel that you are including each other in each other's lives? So like I was in a relationship recently that felt like this, and now I'm in one that feels like this. So different level of closeness, right? And then there's attachment, which there's anxious attachment. There's basically different forms of insecure attachment: anxious, disorganized, avoidant, and secure. And so we wanted to measure, does this have any effect on the bond between two people? And so those are the first things that we do is we also measure things like sexual communication. Like how well do you talk about sex? Most couples don't talk about sex. And so one thing we know we wanted to do is like improve human communication around this important facet of life. It's really kind of hard to talk about things that are like that intimate, you know? So then the first few weeks of the protocol are all about your individual psychosexual development. So we teach certain new concepts, things like erotic individuation and sexual sovereignty. So erotic individuation means you have a unique mind and you have unique turn-ons, and you need to get to know yourself sexually before you can get to know your partner. And you need
Yeah.
to share with your partner what it is that turns you on and what it is that's unique about your sexuality and your psychological space. And then sexual sovereignty, this is a really big part of our protocol. We don't teach consent properly to couples, and people who've been in relationships for literally 10 years may not be engaging in consensual behaviors together, which can actually degrade intimacy pretty significantly. And one of the most beautiful things that I've watched with Aaron and Saida is like when you watch them in person and you hang out with them, everything they do is consensual. It's not just sex. It's like, hey, can I make this for you? Hey, can I touch you? Hey, what would you think of this? Like they're constantly checking in with each other to a degree where I'm like, the level of respect and the level of physical autonomy that they give each other is like something I've never seen. It's like Olympic level relating. And so we teach people a lot about consent, and we show people how to embody that consent. And then in the actual sex therapy, we're teaching people about how to actually use their sex organs properly. Like people have never been taught their sexual pleasure anatomy. So we teach people how to actually use your pelvic floor, how to breathe into your pelvic floor, how to create arousal with or without a partner with you. We teach people about essentially like how to engage in sex that doesn't require so much friction, but actually creates more suction, which actually creates more pleasure and arousal because you can actually have less intense movement, but even more physical during the act of sex. So we're teaching a different way of relating physically. We're also teaching a person who is the receiver to bring in the partner who is the giver. And that's very different than what you see in pornography, which is like there's always the giver just shoving their, inside someone.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, is what most people are experiencing. And it's like painful and it sucks. And so we're really slowing down that entire process and teaching the receiver to bring in a partner with their body slowly, carefully, methodically. And then the giver learns to attune and be an adaptive partner. So by the end of the protocol, you also learn methods for enhancing attachment, creating deeper appreciation for your partner, integrating your nervous system at every step of the way. There's a lot of nervous system integration in this program because anything erotic is charged and triggering. And so we know people are going to get triggered, and people have gotten triggered in this program. And we teach you ways to regulate your nervous system despite maybe having something come up. And one of my dreams is that we develop a version of this method for both sexual trauma as well as for just teaching a light version of it to college students to teach about consent. Because I think that we're creating a paradigm shift in how we teach sexuality to the world. And because we're really aiming to be a clinical sex therapy company and a digital health product, it's really rooted in science. And so we're pioneering this science of human pleasure right now.
Oh my gosh. As you're talking, I'm like, okay, maybe not school, but high school, latter of high school and college. This should just be part of the curricula, right?
I was thinking that honestly, and like, honestly, I have this friend. So I spoke to, I know it's crazy to talk to psychics, but sometimes I talk to this psychic Terry, and Terry's always like, he actually was the reason why I decided to pursue this sex therapy. He's like, you're going to create this new paradigm in sexuality, and it's going to be akin to like things that were discovered by Kinsey and Master Johnson. And I was like, Terry, how am I? I'm not even a sex therapist. I'm not even a sexual medicine expert. I'm a general practitioner. Why am I the person who's capable of doing this? He's like, hey, this is what the message that I'm getting. I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm going to go do it. So I was already on that path. And then I actually took the leap. Last time I talked to Terry, he's like, you're going to be teaching this in schools, and he's going to be in like, it's going to be an educational institution. I was like, Terry, you really think that I'm going to be able to get this into schools? And he's like, look, it's what's coming out. And I'm like, I don't know. And then like literally it's like I've been talking to some investors and they're like, yeah, why don't you put this into like a sex ed course for young people and college students? And I was like, are you serious? And so it's pretty wild that like I've kind of been guided in a way in this company. Like it's so beyond my normal comprehension, because like to be doing something this literal cutting edge and this literal like taboo is insane. But like when you just keep on feeling like, I don't know why I can't actually explain like what keeps on driving me to do this, except for that fact that I just feel like there's something behind me pushing me forward to do it. Like I see problems in the world that have not been properly resolved. Like I saw blood sugar metabolism as a massive issue a decade ago. In 2014, I was studying blood sugar metabolism because I was basically borderline pre-diabetic. And I started wearing a blood sugar monitor.
Yeah.
And I was the first doctors to put blood sugar monitors on people a decade ago. And now there's so many companies in the space. And actually, one of the next things I'm building for my brand, Dr. Molly, is I'm building like a derivative product that's basically like it's a 12-week program that uses blood sugar monitoring and education to get a person to resolve their prediabetes. And I've already done this for myself and a ton of my patients. And I'm like, I already have this course that just needs to be derived into like a light version for like the average person. And so we're developing like a program that's like my medical practice, but like very, very light for anybody. It's much more affordable than what I charge. But that's the next thing I'm going to be, after like we finish this next cohort with Adamo, I'm going to be working on essentially like this sort of like product that just prescribes people blood sugar monitors and then guide them through how to resolve their prediabetes. But I'm pretty much convinced that if you get your energy metabolism right and you get your connection properly organized in your life, like, and you know where to direct your energy. So there's kind of three pillars of what I stand for. One is energy. How do you produce more energy? How do you gather energy from your environment, which we can talk about next? And then
Yeah.
how do you connect energy into the world around you? And
Yeah.
then how do you direct the energy to something productive, right? So your meaning and purpose. So I'm really into like helping people find their purpose, helping people manifest the best life that they want for themselves through the science of like, there's actually a science to human potential. And I really see this all as both science and spirituality. But when I look at human potential, it's not just this concept that's like a woo-woo concept. It's like, no, it's like literally energy potential. It's like you're a battery and you can plug in and you can do stuff. And so what are you going to do? Are you going to make more people? This is a great use of your time as a woman. Are you going to create art? Are you going to create companies? Are you going to create value in the world? Are you going to like help heal the world? Like, what are you going to do with your energy? And so I just feel like I figured out life. And honestly, it's like I'm 40 years old. I'm happier. I'm healthier. I'm more connected. I'm wealthier. I'm joyful. I'm more joyful. I have more well-being. I have more purpose than I did a decade ago. And I think this is all a product of just like focusing on first principles, focusing on optimizing my energy, optimizing my relationships, optimizing my focus on what is my purpose.
Yeah, yeah. And as you're talking, I'm literally like, this is exactly where I'm at as well. And actually, if you just focus on everyone needs more energy, people
Yeah.
are, when you're tired and exhausted, you don't eat well, you don't sleep, you then don't sleep well. You have
Don't have any motivation.
everything. You don't have
Yeah.
time for patience to build the connections. You talk yourself out of everything. You're low, depressed. Like it is such a big part.
Yeah. And I really do feel like it's not as complicated as it has to be. But there's this quote that I was reading today, and it was basically like it was like the sign of intelligence is the ability to adapt to one's environment.
Mm.
And to me, like that's true intelligence. It's not how smart you are. It's like if you get planted somewhere in the world like a seed, can you get the water, the air, the food, and the support to grow?
Yeah.
And we really look at ourselves as like so separate from nature, but we are nature. And I've basically learned how to like move anywhere in the world, find people, find great food, find great ways to exercise, find like place to plant. I can plant and I can grow. And that to me is an end result of just spending a decade studying health and
Yeah.
studying actual fundamental science of health, not just like not just eating right and exercising more, but like what's underneath that? Why does that actually change your energy? And how do you liberate more energy? So, as somebody who's dealt with ADHD, who's dealt with eating disorders, I've dealt with all sorts of problems. I mean, insulin resistance. I mean, I used to have terrible periods, period pain. I mean, you name it. I've overcome so many things. I had subclinical hypothyroidism at one point. I've been burned out a few times. I've had a concussion. Like I've had a lot of health challenges. And every time I get challenged by something, I figure it out and I bounce back.
Yeah.
And I'm very fortunate. I have a ton of education behind me to help fix. I'm really good at fixing bodies, but I also understand the fundamentals of building energy into the body. And it all starts with how do you feed yourself?
Yeah.
And most people are getting it all wrong. And there's so many people that are like, be in the keto bandwagon, be in the vegan bandwagon. And I think we are heading into an entirely new place where it's like, screw dogmatic belief systems around food, focus on quality of food, and then focus on refining your diet for your body. And if that means that you feel amazing eating vegetarian or vegan certain times, like I ate like vegan for a few days this week because I just felt like I needed a detox. I felt amazing. And then I had some meat and I felt amazing. And I'm really a big believer on sourcing food and ingredients and super, super listening to your body to find out what feels good. So, like, if you feel awful eating beans and legumes because it's inflaming your body because maybe you have autoimmune condition and you don't do well with lectins, then don't eat those. But if you feel like I didn't think that I could eat grains and legumes for a long time because I had been convinced by the paleo community that I was going to die if I ate these. And I started eating them. I dated a guy who was vegetarian and I started eating a lot more plant-based for like 4 months. Now I lost a ton of hair. I did not have enough protein in my diet. So I was like literally losing hair because your hair is protein. Your hair is made of
Yeah.
keratin. So I lost a ton of hair, but I got super lean and super detoxed. I felt like my body had gone through a massive detox. But the most surprising thing is my gut health did not decline because I spoke with the people that were preparing the food, and we were pressure cooking all the beans and legumes. And I didn't do a ton of grains, but I did some grains, and I wouldn't eat large quantities of them. I would do maybe a half cup or more. Um, but I went from thinking there's no way for me to eat these foods to like, how the heck am I eating beans and legumes and grains right now? I thought I could never eat these.
Yeah.
And so I really learned that like so much of our mind is controlling what we actually feel good in. So like it really does require you to create a mindset that I can digest anything. I can handle like true physical metabolic health is like you can actually, if it's a real food, by the way, I'm talking a total ingredient. I'm not talking about it being a processed food, but a really healthy metabolism can digest anything on the spectrum from vegan to paleo to keto. Like that entire spectrum of meat, fat, protein, carbs, nuts, seeds, legumes, all of the foods. If you can adapt to consuming all of these things, that's the most healthy metabolism. But there are people that struggle from chronic diseases, and they do have to cut out dairy. They do have to cut out. I mean, I can't do wheat because I definitely have celiac. So wheat is a big no for me. Gluten is a big no for me. But I think aside from gluten, if you can, and then I also avoid foods with glyphosate. So I don't do a lot of like oats and whatnot because there's a lot of glyphosate in a lot of certain things. But generally speaking, I have been able to create a physiology now where I can digest a lot more than I could even 6 months ago because I opened up my diet to much more variety. And you want a ton of variety in your diet. You want 30 to 50 different types of plants in your diet weekly. Okay. That's actually a lot of work to do.
Yes.
And that is not an overnight thing that happened to me, right? I had to figure this out. I had to figure out where can I source fresh fruits and vegetables? Where can I find the best herbs and spices? Because those are also plants. Where can I learn how to ferment and preserve things so I can just take little spoonfuls of things on my plate and have more fermented foods? If you look at my fridge, it's phytonutrient packed. I am not a believer in the carnivore movement. If you want to go for it, people go for it. But I am such a believer in high quality proteins, fats, and carbs and a balanced diet. But I now feel like I'm ready to actually teach people how to adapt to like different food supplies. And the number one thing I tell people is you got to get the processed foods out of your diet. You got
Yeah.
to get the fast foods out of your diet. You got to get the liquid sugars out of your diet. Honestly, most people should just not be eating any wheat produced in the North Americas because they're poisonous. I don't do well with corn either. Honestly, I feel pretty bloated and inflamed when I do corn
Yeah.
because a lot of corn sold in America is pretty poor quality. But when I go to Mexico, magically the corn is okay. I don't know why, right? So not all of Mexico, but certain parts of like Guatemala and more rural parts of Mexico when they're actually producing more traditional corn products, those I seem to tolerate. But generally speaking, the most important thing I can teach people is how to listen to their bodies. What is their body telling them? And then if I look at your labs, I can literally like knobs change your diet to adjust your cholesterol and your blood sugar. I can
Yeah.
actually keep a person metabolically well by changing their diet pretty easily.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just want to teach everyone this now. So pretty much like that's what I'm dedicated for. My next decade of my life is like, how can I help as many people as possible optimize their metabolism, optimize their connection, and find their purpose? Because if I can do those three things, then like I will die a happy woman. It's all that really matters to me in life. And
Oh, but
family
I
and community.
think you've already done so much. I mean, you're not going to die, but if you die, you've died now. You'd be a happy woman. You've already done so
I
much.
actually would be a happy woman now, but I do have to
Yeah.
say that like I look at Peter Attia and I look at Andrew Huberman, they're like 50s and
Yeah.
they're like at the top of their game and I'm only 40. And I feel like I've done a lot for a 40-year-old, but I'm like,
Yeah.
man, where am I going to be at 50? What am I going to be at 50? Like I've got
60.
friends that are 50. I mean, I have friends that are 50 that look like they're 35 and they are hot. And I'm like, it is so cool to see culture aging completely differently than our parents and our grandparents. Like what are these young 20-year-olds who are biohacking their health at 20 going to look like when they're 60? Like, we are entering a totally exciting phase of human existence where like
Yeah.
we are going to see a whole generation of young people get completely sick by 30, and we're going to see a whole generation of young people be like hot forever. Like, so
Yeah.
it's really a choice. And I think young people are picking, there's the sort of like the people who are trashing their bodies, eating garbage. And then there's the young people that are like, I'm going to lead the future. I'm going to I'm going to be healthy now. I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to fill my body with garbage. And these young people are going to stay healthier for so much longer, but there's going to be a huge divide. And there already is a huge divide. Like, there are young people suffering from so metabolic diseases that they should not be seeing until they're 60 or 50,
Yeah.
and they're seeing them at 15 to 20. So it sucks because like we know everything we need to know to be healthy, but we
Yeah.
don't, it's not equally distributed. And
Yeah.
because it's not equally distributed, there are so many young people suffering unnecessarily from horrible chronic lifestyle related diseases. And I just really want to help those people. I really, really want to help them know that they don't have to have that as their destiny. It doesn't have to be their future to get sick, you know?
Yeah. Would you say they're suffering from their lifestyle, but also would you say there's some genetics in this now because of the last like 100 years?
I am not a bit, I really think genetic loads the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of people, like one of my best friends, her parents are both very overweight, and she is fit as F, right? This girl is super fit. Like, she used to be actually too skinny, and now she's gotten into CrossFit and protein, and she is so strong. Like, she just
What's
put
the
5 pounds,
protein?
she just had a baby and she just put 5 pounds of muscle on her body. The
Yeah.
girl is ripped. My sister, I mean, one of my older sister, I mean, both my parents have issues with their metabolism. And my older sister is like absolutely ripped. Like, she is hot. Like, she's 42, and like she got washboard, like her abs are just like, she's like perfect abs. She's had 2 kids. So like, I am just not, I think everybody wants to blame genetics. And there are certain conditions there that like are very rare, that are like literally like you are going to have high cholesterol no matter what.
Yeah.
Very, very small percentage of high cholesterol have familial hypercholesterolemia. Very, very few people with, glucose issues have clear, like certain weird rare forms of diabetes. Like, most of it is lifestyle and most of it is diet. The thing that's inherited is the lifestyle and the diet. So everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, my family has bad teeth. That's why I have cavities. No, you inherited poor dental hygiene practices. You inherited the oral microbiome from your parents. You inherited the eating habits from your parents. You,
Yeah.
you learn how to take care of yourself from those that you spend time with. This is why it's so important to not overlook human connection and human relationships and health, because you often learn, and how you eat is determined by who you spend time with. So, for example, I always like to give examples from my personal life. Started seeing this guy,
Oh yeah.
hot
Tell
dad.
me.
So, I mean, he's like a super hot dad in Wyoming cowboy. Okay.
Yeah.
And I we're like definitely on, I'm definitely like, I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but he has no way he's listening to my podcast because he is so not interested in technology. But so this guy is like, I spent time with him for like a month, and part of the reason why we're almost breaking up, and like I don't even know if we're gonna break up this week or not, but part of the reason why there is potentially a breakup happening is I said to him, I go, just so you know, I really want to work on my lifestyle, and I kind of want to return to some of the things that were working for me before I started dating you. And I want to eat a lot more plants, and I don't want to eat any more fried foods, because I ate some fried food with him. And I don't want to drink any more alcohol, and I don't want to eat sugar, and like all these things I just don't, they're not working for my lifestyle. And like, and I'm not blaming you.
Yeah.
These are things that I know don't work for me. And so I'm just letting you know that like, I'm going to be probably returning to a lot of the things that were working for me. And he took it as, I'm a bad influence on you. We should break up. And I was like, that's not exactly what I'm saying, but it's not totally wrong. It's, the truth is that you are influenced. Like, we had this beautiful date to this really cool town called Thermopolis, which is like hot springs. But we ate bar food in like a small Wyoming town. And there's not a lot of options for health in like a small Wyoming town, right?
Yeah.
And I never drink, but I had like a white Russian, like literally, like the dude, like I was like literally like they were like, "Are you really drinking a white Russian?" I'm like, "Well, I've never really had one before, so I feel like I should try one."
Yeah.
And I broke out. I got a massive zit on my forehead within a few days. Like my body, I gained like 3 pounds of water weight, which is all inflammation.
Yeah.
And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I am not thriving physically in this relationship. Like
Yeah.
I'm not getting healthier. And one of my previous relationships that I had, the guy that I did before him, who I was vegetarian, I was losing my hair because of not eating any protein. So
Yeah.
it's funny because like I have one relationship where he's feeding me all the wild elk, and which is actually very healthy. My hair is
Yeah.
like getting really thick again. But there's all these other things that we're engaging in that are not healthy for me, right? Previous relationship, highly stressful, but lost a lot of weight, ate vegetarian, got a massive physical detox, but actually testosterone dropped pretty significantly because I wasn't getting enough
Yes.
protein. And so it's like your literal health has changed by who you spend time with.
Yeah.
And I'm like very optimistic about dating. And it's funny because everyone's like, how are you building an intimacy company? And you seem to have some issues with your relationships. And I was like, literally, I am out in the open, honest that like the part of the reason why I'm building this is because I need this product because
Yeah.
I had sexual dysfunction in my 20s. I had a lack of arousal. I had problems with orgasm. I had problems with pain during sex. And I literally overcame all of these sexual dysfunctions. But they still, I mean, sometimes sexual pain does happen to me still, especially with a new partner who like doesn't know the method that I'm teaching. And a lot of men just engage in what they see in porn. So it's
Yeah.
like I think it's important to work on the problems that you have. And like I'm super out in the open that like relationships are not my forte. This is not a couples therapy program for relationships. It's a program for relationships, but it's a program for human physical intimacy.
Yeah.
And it's about sexuality, which I do think I've actually mastered. Like I think that if you on the scale of like 0 to 100 in terms of like capacity to enjoy and embody pleasure, like I'm definitely a 99th percentile.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually handling human relationships, I no, I'm not 99 percentile by any means. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still figuring things out. And as I talk to people, I mean, I was talking to this amazing couple recently, and you know, this man said he's like, you know, how many marriages stay together is like, I don't know, maybe 50%. He's like, but of those that are staying together, how many are actually happy in their marriage? And he's like, it's probably a fraction. Maybe it's 10% of the marriages are truly happy. And he's like, there's a lot of people that are in challenging relationships. I think most people actually struggle with emotional intimacy. And I'm reading books on this topic. I have a coach in this area. Like, I really believe that you have to work on the parts of yourself that are challenging. But I think it really comes down to communication and conflict resolution. These two facets, if you get them wrong, you're going to have a bad relationship
Yeah.
and compromise, like these are big facets that we don't get taught in school either. So as much as I'm like, yeah, we got to teach sex ed, we also should be teaching young people how to relate emotionally because we're not teaching that. And like, I'm not an expert in it, but I'd love to develop a program for that with some like experts because my job is not to be the expert in everything. My job is to create the platform so that the experts can come with me to create products and services.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. There's so much, isn't there? I mean, like, you've touched on eating disorders. I'm eating disorder therapist, post eating disorder, like even that, like psychology around food in schools. How is that not
Oh
even
my
a
God.
thing?
I was so bulimic in high school and college,
Oh,
and I overcame it with a workbook. Literally, I sat down, I bought this workbook on Amazon. I'm like, I'm so embarrassed and I'm so ashamed that I'm bulimic that I'm going to go and I'm going to fit myself. But you know what I learned was that it wasn't until I really, really, really worked on my relationship with me. Like we do not teach self-love. We do not teach nourishment of ourselves, right?
yeah.
Like I did not learn how to regulate my emotions properly. And so when the thing about bulimia that a lot of women don't know and men is that it's when you're taking on too much, you take on too much, right? And then you have to purge. So it's like literally it's an emotional processing. Uh, it's like literally how people are finding their way to deal with challenging emotions. And I see people, whether you drink alcohol, whether you smoke pot, whether you binge and purge, whether you binge on food, whether you restrict food, it's all a control thing, right? And yet it's fundamentally below that level of control. It's actually a disconnection thing, right? It's like I have challenging emotions. I need to control them. But actually underneath it is like I feel disconnected from myself and others.
Yeah.
Like that disconnection, that is the root. And that is the hardest part to solve. And it took me, I mean, honestly, I studied attachment and I studied my relationship with my parents and I really studied my relationship to myself and I really sat with myself. And I really think that a lot of people should look at things like internal family systems, parts work. Like there's so much of that deep disconnection underneath the surface of um of eating disorders and then the emotional dysregulation that comes from that,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't feel my feelings, so I'm going to control my body. And I can't handle my feelings, so I'm going to control my body. And I'm going to like, and my one of my siblings has been anorexic and like also dealt with like challenges with food for a long time. And underneath that for her is anxiety, but underneath that is there's definitely a level of disconnection. And so I think that we have to get to the root of these problems and you have to really work on that relationship to yourself and the relationship to your parents because that is your root system of your being. That is how you feel rooted in the world, is how connected you feel to yourself, how connected you feel to your environment, how connected you feel to your family and your friends. And the more connected you feel, the more rooted you are.
Yeah.
And there's a great book on love, and it's really this concept of ontological rootedness. And what we're all craving is we're craving connection and a sense of rootedness, a sense of we're safe, a sense that like we are cared for, we are part of something, we're part of a community, we're part of we're part of like something. We're not alone in the world, you know. And if you look at trees, if you look at nature, it's all connected, right? It's all like the plants are all connected to each other. They're all communicating to each other. When we feel disconnected and we feel uprooted, that's when we try to strive for control. We try to grasp for control. And then we control the nourishment, right? We control the energy. We're like, if I can just like grab onto something, then I'll be okay. But what you actually need is to actually root into the ground and nourish yourself from that place of deep rootedness. And that rootedness comes from connection, comes from connecting to everyone around you, from really being vulnerable, from being open, from reaching out to others saying, I'm struggling, I'm suffering, I need help, and not doing it on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my God, this podcast has literally been filled with so much information. I'm gonna have to tell people to bring their notepads and their pens when they're listening to
You
this.
should. I have a
Ooh.
hard time with like, we were joking before we started the podcast. So like, she's just like, are you ADHD? And I was like, not only am I probably ADHD, I'm pretty sure I'm on the spectrum beyond that. Like, I don't think I'm full on. I don't think I'm autistic, but I think I'm certainly neuroatypical to a
Yeah,
like a big degree. And
I love
that
it.
being stereotypical is in itself like I actually have to tell guys I'm dating, I'm like, okay, so here's the thing. I'm neurotypical. I get distracted. I can hyper focus. I sometimes become emotionally volatile if I can't handle what's going on. So I have to take a break and I will need to like, and I'll need to cool off. And then I also sometimes miss social cues. And like sometimes you'll like make a joke and I have no idea what you're talking about. And like, I mean, I have to like let people know that like also like my mind probably moves like twice as fast and I have double the energy of most people. So that's who I am. Hi. And like, I just try to let people know up front, like, you're dealing with an alien. And I'm also incredibly capable of like I can accomplish anything I put my mind to, but it
Yeah.
comes from a place of like, I, I'm so driven by what I do that it's hard to date me because I'm on a mission, you know?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kind of like Wonder Woman.
I can relate to you in so many ways, literally so many ways. You just need someone that can keep up. That's all.
Yeah, totally.
Simple.
Totally. I know. And honestly, I have such good luck in dating that like I'm not worried about it.
No.
I feel like I look at my dating life and I'm like, man, I have had some really great loves in this life. I am so lucky that
Yeah.
I've been able to have so much love. And, I don't have a lot of regrets with my dating life either. I just haven't found the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with.
Yeah.
And he's coming.
Yeah. And let's
Yeah.
the current date isn't listening because he knows he's about to get dumped.
Well, he literally, no. He literally started the whole breakup conversation. So
Oh,
he started it. He started the breakup conversation. And I think we both know that I'm a lot to handle, but also like we have completely different orientations towards growth and
yeah.
life. And if one person is all about staying the same and the other person is all about transformation,
It's not gonna
it's
work.
pretty fundamental, you
Not
know?
gonna work. Yeah,
And also, I
totally.
don't drink, I don't smoke, and I don't eat processed foods, fried foods, or fast foods. And so these are pretty big categories that like I'm gonna be like, look, dude, like these are non-negotiables for me. So you
Yeah.
can do what you like, but I'm not gonna be doing these things. And that means that like, and also like his idea of a great vacation is fishing. And my great idea of a great vacation is like 5-star hotel in the middle of nowhere. So like, definitely different ideas, but we can
Yeah.
cut that out of the podcast or we can leave it. I don't care.
No, I'm sorry. I control the edits. It's in.
Oh my God. Okay, we're keeping it in. We're keeping it in. Oh my God. Honestly, it's probably mostly ladies listening, I'm guessing. So I'm sure they can relate to the challenges and hopefully I'm very relatable.
Yeah, I definitely think you are, especially to my audience. I know this. Thank you so much. Where can everyone find you?
Okay, so we're starting our next cohort for our sex therapy. It is going to be starting in early June, and you can go to www.livingadamo.com or at livingadamo, Adamo, on Instagram. And then my Instagram is at drmolly.co, and my website is www.drmolly.co.
Amazing. And I will stick that all in the show notes. Thank you so much, Molly. You've been an absolute pleasure.
Rock. I'll have a wonderful day, Elle.
And you. Bye.